Hey everyone, just wanted to say thank you for tuning in for another episode of Can't Stop Snapping. Really excited to have you back and really looking forward to the next few episodes. As I've stated before, over the next several episodes, we will be breaking down all cards that are currently in the beta build of the game, and I will be partnering with a different content creator in every episode to break down a different cost tier of cards. So very excited to bring you this additional content. I'm really pleased with the response so far and the feedback we've received so far. So thank you for listening and subscribing. Just wanted to ask for everybody to make sure to go follow the Twitter account, which is @can't_stop_snap, to follow the podcast and to know about upcoming episodes and upcoming content we hope to cover. And again, as always, make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the upcoming episodes. And thank you so much for listening, and enjoy the next episode. Hey listeners, I am here with Cqrbon. Cqrbon is a content creator for Marvel Snap. He's been streaming the game over on Twitch for about a week now, ever since the beta launched. And I'm excited to have him here on the show to break down all of the one-cost cards in Marvel Snap that are in the game during the beta. So Cqrbon, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Michael, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to getting into this with you.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited. This is kind of our first episode. We're going to have a series of 6 episodes breaking down the different cost cards, and excited to kick things off with you here. So, before we launch into the breakdown of the cards, I just want to give you a second. You've had, I believe, about a week with the game. You've been streaming it several days, and I just wanted to, hear your overall impressions. What are your thoughts on the game? What stood out to you? Just kind of a brief overview how you're feeling about the game.
I've been having a lot of fun with the game. To be completely honest, I've been having a lot of fun with the game. I've been having fun with the community. I think that's one of my favorite parts so far, is just being able to interact. The community is so excited for it, and it's there's tons of people in Discord, tons of people in my chat. We're just having fun. So there's that new aspect of it that's a lot of fun. In terms of the gameplay and that kind of stuff, I feel like it's really like fresh. Like, I feel like they're doing something very different compared to a lot of other card games. I have a lot of experience with like Hearthstone and Legends of Runeterra, and they're definitely doing something different with this game, and I'm excited to see it. So I've been having a great time with the game so far, and I'm excited to see more of it. So
awesome. No, that sounds great. I couldn't agree more with you as far as the community being in the Discord. There's been just a lot of fun stuff, a lot of excitement. Obviously, there's been some feedback and some concerns as well, but overall, I think the community is just really excited about the game.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're going to break down the cards here now. So I just want to kind of give an intro to the listeners. I'm assuming most people out there listening, you're excited about the game, you're familiar with it at this point, but I want to just give a breakdown for anybody that's new coming in and is really learning about the game. So in the first episode, we talked about how kind of the game operates, but breaking it down a little bit further of how cards operate. So each card is based off of a character, a person. It could be a hero or a villain or some kind of being from the Marvel Universe. And each card has a couple of attributes. It has a cost. Marvel Snap, like a lot of card games, has a mana system, a cost to play cards. And so each card will have a cost. Today, we're breaking down all of the one-cost cards. And then every card has a power or a strength. Basically, that's, how much strength they have, how much power they have, which helps you control locations, win locations, which is the goal to win the game. And then last, most cards, but not all cards, have some sort of ability. And that's probably where a lot of our conversation is going to surround today, is the combination of power levels and abilities and what makes these different cards useful or not so useful. And there are a couple cards that don't have abilities. And on those ones, we'll just read the descriptive text that's on the card. So we're just going to go card by card. We are using marvelsnap.io. It's made by a member of the community. It's a website where you can see a database of all the cards. So if you're wanting to follow along or you're wanting to go look at all the cards that we know about thus far, make sure to go to marvelsnap.io. So, Cqrbon, we're going to kick things off here with Agent 13. So Agent 13, obviously, is a one-cost card. Two power, and the ability reads, on reveal, add a random card to your hand. So first things off, there are several cards that kind of have random abilities, and I don't know how I feel about it. I've seen a lot of randomness happen with some of these cards in the game, and sometimes it's really good. Sometimes, it's RNG, right? So what's your overall impression of this card and just maybe some of the randomness from some of the cards?
I have to say, for this particular card, I haven't seen this ran in decks yet, because I haven't really seen anybody that's had it in their deck. I will say that on paper, like it looks pretty good. I mean, the 2 power, obviously kind of a vanilla stat line, but adding a random card to your hand, especially there's a few decks that rely on you having more cards in your hand to activate good effects. So this is a very good card into those decks. As far as the randomness aspect, I would say that I'm more okay with randomness in Marvel Snap than other card games, specifically because of how like the game functions. There's the retreat, there's the snapping, so there's that element of managing randomness, and you can always retreat if you feel like you're gonna get screwed by bad luck or whatever. So
yeah, that is a great point. That does make it a lot better than some other games where they're more RNG dependent, because you kind of have the meta strategy of should I bet higher, should I retreat, etc. So that's a really great point. Let's jump into the next card here. So Angel is also a 1 cost 2 power card. So same stat line as Agent 13, but the ability is when one of your cards is destroyed, this flies out of your deck to replace it. So interestingly enough, I was watching somebody stream today, and we probably won't dive too deep into Venom. That's kind of a strategy that's going on in the game right now. I'll cover that in my 2-cost card episode. But, the person who calculated thinking they were still going to win the game, even with this great combo the opponent was going to have, but they didn't account for Angel coming out of the deck when the opponent destroyed some of their cards. So, I don't know. Have you seen this card played at all? Have you played with this card at all?
I do have this card, and I have seen this card played quite a bit. It's very, very popular right now because as far as I can tell, the most popular archetype at the moment is a Nova Carnage deck that this card works pretty well in. I will say, in my personal opinion, I think this card is actually overrated because when you draw this and when you pull it from your deck with the destroy effect, obviously that's very good. That's deck thinning. That's increasing your chances to draw the cards that you want. It's a free body. It's very good. But when you're drawing this, it's very, very bad compared to the other like 1-drop options you have available. So I think in a deck where you want to be destroying stuff at earlier turns, like turns 3 and 4, I think this is good. I think if you're trying to do a later game, turn 5 or 6 destroy combo, this card doesn't go into that deck.
No, that makes a lot of sense because the probability by that point of this being drawn is a lot higher. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, well, let's dive into the next card here. So we have Ant-Man. This is one of the first cards, you get in the game. And so I think everybody has played with this card, right? So Ant-Man is a 1 cost, 1 power card, and the ability reads ongoing. If you have 3 other cards here, plus 3 power. So kind of the strategy here is, starts with a very, basic low stat line. But whether you play this early or you play it late in the game, if you max out your limit of 4 cards at a location, this becomes, a 1 cost 4 card, right? So I've seen it as kind of a good just filler in a deck where maybe you just need an extra card when you're trying to fill the board. But I don't know if you feel the same way or if you have a different opinion about Ant-Man.
So I played a lot with Ant-Man. Ant-Man has gone into most of my decks that I've played, unless there was like a specific reason where he doesn't fit into it. I personally think Ant-Man is very, very good. He's usually, you're paying 1 energy and you can usually activate the 4 power effect. And it's because it's pretty easy to fill up a board, especially if you're playing a deck that's focused around that. And he slots in so well into so many archetypes. There's so many different decks that want to be doing this, and he's especially good. And one of my favorite decks is Onslaught at the moment. He gets which Onslaught is a 6 energy card that doubles ongoing effects. So this becomes a 1 energy 7 power card, which is very strong in that deck. So I personally really, really like Ant-Man, and I think he has a lot of potential in a lot of archetypes.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really beat a 1 cost 7 power card, right? If you can get that most games, then you're going to be sitting pretty well. So Awesome. Yeah, let's dive into the letter B here. So those were the A cards. We've got Blade. So Blade is a 1-cost 3-power card. So that's our first 3-power card here. And the ability here reads, on reveal, discard a card from your hand. So this, you kind of mentioned there's a couple different archetypes to the game right now, and there's some that are kind of based around discard. I'm not sure if you've played with a discard deck yet or not, or if you've played against any, but this would obviously be a good card to include in a discard deck.
Yeah. Blade is an interesting one because obviously one energy for just 3 base power is pretty good. The discard effect is it's challenging because there's some decks that I think that you want to be discarding, and there's other decks where you want to be minimizing. You want to have some discard effects to activate cards like Strong Guy is very good in a discard deck. So I think as we see more cards that kind of go all in on the discard archetype, I think Blade gets much better in those decks. But I think in more just general decks that aren't running, that want to discard some but not a ton, I think there are better options than Blade just because of the random part of it.
Yeah, that is one of the hard things with the discard archetype, because there's certain cards that benefit more from being discarded, and with Blade you really don't have control over that. So I would agree with that. Well, let's jump to Deadpool next. So Deadpool is a 1-cost 1-power card, and it reads, when this card is destroyed, return it to your hand with double the power. I'll just say off the bat, I've seen people debating about this in the Discord. It sounds cool, right? Like you double the power. Obviously, it starts at 1, and so the ideal, perfect world is you're able to somehow destroy this card multiple times, like destroy it and play it multiple times somehow, and it gets doubled multiple times, right? So you go to 2, 4, 8, or something. But the probability of that happening, you drawing it early on and that happening multiple times in a game, I would say is relatively low. Not sure if you would agree or disagree.
The Deadpool's another tough one because we haven't seen all of the cards, and we haven't seen all the interactions and stuff, so it's hard to tell. I think personally, just seeing the number of destroy effects in the game, I think that Deadpool can be good but your deck has to be built around it. So particularly, I think if you can land a buff on Deadpool with a card like Forge beforehand to start the doubling early. So for example, if you get him to 3 power and then kill him and he comes back as a 6 power, that is obviously much better than you having to kill him, like 3 times to get anywhere near the same amount of power value. So I think as we see more people get more cards, I think Deadpool will find a home. But yeah, that's what I think about that.
No, that's a great point. And that's a great thing to point out. I mean, some of these cards we can almost just theorize at this point because, we've talked about this before in the first episode, but, there's a progression in the game where you unlock more cards as you go along. And just by the nature of the game only having been played for 1 week, there's a lot of cards that people really haven't unlocked yet. So definitely something we'll see more of down the road. Well, let's jump through some more of these cards here. Next up, we have Ebony Maw with an impressive stat line of 1 cost and 6 power. But obviously, you'd assume with that kind of a stat line, there's going to be a little bit of a downside. So Ebony Maw's ability reads, you can't play this after turn 3. And then it has an ongoing effect. You can't play cards here. So essentially, you can only play this card on turns 1, 2, or 3 out of 6 turns. And once you play it, you can't play other cards here. So it's not something you can drop turn 6, I'm adding 6 extra power. So there's, high stat line, but kind of a trade-off on the ability.
Ebony Maw is another interesting one because again, this is another card that you would need to build around because it goes into a very specific archetypes. The 2 that I would think of off the top of my head where this would excel and kind of shine would be in a Viper deck. So Viper is a 2 cost that you can give a unit to your opponent and give it. So this is obviously very bad for your opponent. Your opponent cannot play cards at that location if you give them this card. So that's very good for you. That's a powerful combo. And I also think that this is very interesting in like a very aggressive discard heavy deck, because even you can't play it after turn 3, but you're able to discard it. Then it becomes discard fodder afterwards. And then early on, you can fill up a location with a lot of power early with this card. So
that is a great point. That's that last piece I actually hadn't considered. So that's a great insight. Appreciate that. Let's dive into the next card. We've got Elektra here, returning back to the 1 cost, 1 power stat line. Elektra's ability reads, on reveal, destroy a random enemy 1 cost card at this location. What are your thoughts on this card?
I think Elektra is pretty just a solid, like generally a solid card. I think she's a lot better in certain situations against certain decks, obviously. This past week, one of the featured hot locations was Mojo World, which Mojo World, if you have the player with the more units at this location gets an additional 100 power, which is obviously very good. And so Elektra, if you play her on turn 6 or later on and kill one of their 1 costs at this location, then you will guaranteed win this location because you have more units than them. So Elektra was very, very strong with Mojo World. In general, I think Elektra is pretty solid. I think it depends a little bit on the meta, but I definitely can see her seeing play.
Yeah, I definitely saw some of those Mojo World games you talked about, and it was just like every other game, right? And Mojo World was there, and you'd play the Elektra last turn, and it really would just turn the tide of the game. So, yeah, that was kind of fun to watch. And that's fun with the kind of rotating hot locations. It kind of shakes up the meta on a daily, weekly basis, which is awesome. Let's dive into the next card here. The next card is Hawkeye, a 1 cost, 1 power card as well. Hawkeye's ability is on reveal, if you play a card here next turn, plus 2 power. So essentially, the ideal scenario is, you play Hawkeye, and then the next turn you can play another card in the same location. But that does give your opponent a little bit of information of where you may play next turn, which could play to your disadvantage if they have any, Guardians of the Galaxy type cards.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think I personally do not think Hawkeye is good enough in his current state, just because, number one, even if you are playing a card here, you're only getting 3 power for 1 energy, and there's other cards like Ant-Man that we previously looked at that you can squeeze 4 power out of that 1 cost card. And then this card also gives your opponent a ton of information about what you're going to be doing next turn, most likely. I mean, you can I have seen players use it to kind of do fake outs, which is an interesting, because they believe that you are going to play a card with Hawkeye to get that extra power buff. And so, but you can potentially like bamboozle them essentially and get them to misplay it, basically. So
yeah, no, that's a great point. There's a lot of bamboozling that can go on in Marvel Snap as far as the cards, but also obviously the snapping mechanic. So let's go here next to Human Torch. So Human Torch is a 1 cost, 2 power card, and the ability reads, when this moves, double its power. So there are some locations that allow you to move cards, but there are other cards like I want to say Doctor Strange and a couple other cards that allow you to move cards. And so this really kind of only, you can't really take advantage of its ability unless you build a deck that allows you to move cards, because you can't guarantee you're going to have a location that allows you to move it.
Yeah, I believe that this card has not seen any play currently because I don't believe I've seen anybody unlock this card yet. It's because it's a little bit deeper in the card pools. But I believe that this card has potential to be insanely good. If this gets buffed, so for example, if this gets a +2 buff and it has 4 power, and you're doubling that even 1 time, you're getting potentially 8 power out of this 1 cost, which is absolutely incredible. And there are quite a few different cards that let you move cards. So I think in that archetype, I think this is going to be an absolute powerhouse card. We'll have to wait and see, obviously what decks come up, but I'm very excited to see more of this card, and I'm looking forward to building a deck with him as I get more cards.
No, that's a great point. So going from the fire to the ice here, the next card is Iceman. Iceman, his face has become one of the emojis in the official Discord. Kind of become a little bit of a meme. The art, it's kind of been fun. But Iceman is a 1 cost, 2 power card. and his ability reads, on reveal, give a random card in your opponent's hand +1 cost, but that can max out at 6. So you can never make somebody's card more than 6, because then they would never be able to play it theoretically on the last turn of the game. So this one's an interesting one, right? This is the first one, at least today, we've kind of talked about that, you're kind of manipulating the cards in the opponent's hand like this. So what are your thoughts on Iceman?
Iceman is an interesting one. I think Iceman has potential to be very good, especially into like combo decks that are not looking to play like a big, like a big 6 cost as their finisher. More decks that are like Moon Girl that's duplicating your hand and you're playing cheap cards with her. I think this has the potential to really mess those kind of combo decks up. And it's a 1 cost 2 power. That's a vanilla stat line, but the effect is really good, and it just makes your opponent use energy inefficiently, which in a game where there's only 6 turns and you have a limited amount of energy, that's very important. So I definitely think Iceman will see play and experimentation for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Let's keep going here. So the next card we have here is Iron Fist. Iron Fist is a 1 cost 2 power card. And his ability reads, on reveal, move the next card you play 1 location to the left after reveal. So right here, we've talked about the kind of move strategy with the Human Torch, but Iron Fist, so he can basically allow you to have a little bit of control and less randomization over moving cards from 1 location to the next.
Yeah, I think Iron Fist by himself probably does not go into too many decks as just a 1-drop. I think in the move archetype, I think this is an incredibly powerful card. I think the ability, the power, especially to get a card's effect in 1 lane and then get its stats in another lane, has the potential to be very, very strong. So I'm interested to see, especially with that move archetype, with the Human Torch type decks, Heimdall decks. I'm very excited to play with Iron Fist.
Yeah, I'm excited too as well. So continuing on here, we've got Korg. Korg's one of my favorite characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I've really enjoyed him in the most recent movies. So his stat line is 1 cost 2 power, so same as the last card. But his ability is on reveal, shuffle a rock into the opponent's deck. So just for anybody who hasn't been following the game, a rock, there's actually a couple cards or locations that will generate a rock. And basically a rock is a 1 cost 0 power card. So it kind of fills your deck with useless cards. I mean, there may be cards that can buff cards that have no ability, other things like that, but essentially can make you waste turns by drawing cards that really don't fit into your strategy. So another card that can really kind of throw your opponent for a loop early on in the game.
Yeah, I think this card is obviously much better if you play it on an earlier turn. It gets substantially worse. It doesn't scale very well into the later game. So where a lot of these 1 costs, these popular 1 costs can, like Ant-Man and stuff, can come down in the late game and still provide a decent amount of power. Korg on the later turns isn't doing much. However, if you can get him down on turn 1 or 2. The potential for your opponent to brick on a draw is a big deal. So I'll have to sit down sometime and do the math to find out how often you're playing Korg early and how often they're drawing the rock, just to find out the potential impact that this card could have.
Yeah, the percentages there may get a little sticky as you look at what's the percentage of you drawing it early and the percentage of them drawing a rock early, right? Those definitely reduce the later you play it. So. Next, we have Mantis. I saw somebody refer to her, forgetting her name in the Discord, as Antenna Lady today. So Mantis has a stat line of 1 cost and 2 power. And her ability is on reveal, if your opponent played a card here this turn, draw a card from the deck. So Mantis kind of falls into this mini theme. There's several Guardians of the Galaxy characters in the game thus far, and they all seem to have an ability where basically, if you can guess correctly where your opponent's going to play a card the turn you play that Guardians of the Galaxy card, then you get some ability or some buff. And so I think that's definitely an interesting mechanic. There's a little bit of guessing to it, but depending on how your opponent's playing, you may be able to guess better than not of where they're going to play.
Yeah, I think this card is very comparable to Agent 13, which is the first card we looked at that adds a random card to your hand. So Mantis is giving you is not it's a random card, but it's a card from their deck. So but you have the trade-off is that you have to get the trigger, that you're not guaranteed to get the trigger, whereas Agent 13 you're guaranteed to get the card. So I think this is very interesting again in those decks that are looking to add cards to your hand and keep a full hand to activate different effects on other cards. I think this one you're not as happy to be playing on turn one because it becomes kind of a guessing game where your opponent's going to play. I think you would rather be playing something like Agent 13 on turn one. But I definitely think that this could go. This is pretty good, especially on later turns, and can definitely go into the deck. There's another aspect of it, I guess, is that there's a little bit of information gained if you are able to proc the effect. You're able to find out more about what type of deck your opponent is playing, which is good as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. You get a little bit of information potentially early on in the game of what might happen. Next card up, I don't think we'll have a ton to say here, is Misty Knight. Misty Knight is a 1-cost, 2-power card, and is the first card we've looked at today that doesn't have an ability. She has descriptive text that says, "We've got to save this city." Misty Knight's kind of part of the intro to the game, one of the first cards you get, and really, it still has great art. It's a great character that people like, but is meant to be replaced as you progress through the game.
Yeah, Misty Knight obviously is, it's just a vanilla text, it's a 1/2. There's so many other cards that we've looked at and are going to look at that are just straight up better than this card. They just have text that's better. I will say that there is like a small amount of potential. I believe there's a 3-cost card called Patriot that can buff your cards that don't have any text. So this has potential in that kind of deck, but we'll have to see. I have not seen enough so far to make me think that deck is going to be good. So depending on how much support there is for that kind of archetype, she could be good. But other than that, there's so many better options available currently.
Agreed, 100%. Well, next is a card that I've seen everybody play at least a few times, which is Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler is, again, the common stat line we've been seeing, a 1-cost, 2-power card. And Nightcrawler's ability is you can move this once. So essentially you can choose a location on the board to play Nightcrawler, and once during the rest of the game, you can move Nightcrawler, which can really, kind of shift up the game by opening up a location later in the game that your opponent, they don't really know when you're going to open it up, or it can add some extra stats to a location where you may need it late in the game.
Yeah, I have really enjoyed playing with Nightcrawler as a card. I think he is probably on this list one of, if not the most versatile card. There's so much that you can do with him. One of the most interesting things you can do is you can, quote unquote, lock up a location with 4 cards, but Nightcrawler is able to move out of there and you're able to play another card. So that's also very interesting for cards like Angela, which Angela gains power whenever you play a card at this location. So Nightcrawler moving out of the way allows you to play an additional card at that location and buff up Angela even further. So there's all kinds of stuff that you can do with this card. I think it's a very versatile tool that slots into a lot of different decks.
Yeah, agreed. Continue on here, the infamous Nova. We've referenced this a little bit thus far. One of the most played cards and combos in the game thus far. Nova is a 1-cost, 2-power card, and the ability reads, when this is destroyed, give your other cards, meaning all other cards, +2 power. Tell me a little bit about your experience either playing with this combo or playing against this combo with Nova.
Yeah, so this card, in my opinion, is currently the best 1-drop in the game for the effect that you're getting. +2 power on all of your cards is absolutely ridiculous in terms of, like, for comparison, Blue Marvel, which is a 6-power card, is only giving your other cards +1 power. So this is just... It's very challenging. I feel like this card is likely going to get changed. I have not played with it yet. I have played against it quite a bit, and I will say that there are some counters. There's cards that prevent on reveal effects happening to prevent the destroy, and there's cards that prevent cards from being destroyed as well. So there is some counterplay, and but I definitely think this card is currently the best 1-drop and maybe one of the best cards in the entire game right now, and there's a very good chance that this will get changed in the future.
Yeah, that seems to be the discourse. What people are saying and what I think a lot of people are hoping for. So we will see what the developers do. Another card that I've seen kind of memed or just, talked about whether it's good or bad is Quicksilver. Quicksilver is a one cost, a one cost, 2 power card, and the ability reads starts in your opening hand. So essentially, you're guaranteed to have 1 drop on turn 1 with a 2 power stat line that you can just play turn 1. What side of the fence are you on? Are you team Quicksilver? Or are you team anti-Quicksilver?
So I have to say that I really enjoy the math side of this game. So I did do the math on this card when it came out to find out how good it is. Now, to clarify, it replaces one of the 3 cards that start in your hand. So you only start the game with 3 cards from your deck and Quicksilver instead of 4 random cards. So that seems good on paper, but when you do the math, it turns out Quicksilver actually makes it very difficult for you to draw the cards you actually want to draw into later in the game. There's just not. It's just basically a bad card in my opinion. There is a specific situation where I think Quicksilver is good, and I think if you were to put him in a deck that runs maybe 1 other 1 drop and then heavily leans into 2 and 3 drops for a very tempo oriented deck, I think that is the only scenario where Quicksilver makes sense in my mind.
Okay. Yeah. Hopefully we don't start, more fires with this conversation because it seems to come up every day in the Discord. So, but I mean, you've done the math, so there you go. We've certified that Quicksilver is maybe not the best card. Okay. We have one more Q starting card, which is Quinjet. This is one I haven't seen a lot of people play with yet. And so as I was preparing for this, I was thinking about this card. So Quinjet's a 1 cost, 2 power card, and Quinjet's ability is ongoing. Cards that didn't start in your deck cost 1 less. What are your thoughts on this?
This card has the potential to be one of the best 1 drops in the game. We have to see it more in action. People need to unlock it and build a deck that fits with it. But there are a lot of different effects. Even just the 1 drops we've looked at. We've seen Agent 13. We've seen Mantis that add cards to your hand. And so this energy cost reduction in Marvel Snap is very, very, very good. Just because there is a limited amount of energy, there's a limited number of turns. It's very, very strong. And there are so many cards that this synergizes with that add cards to your hand. And there's a lot of interesting applications. One of the most interesting is I've seen a potential Thanos combo deck. Thanos, that if you don't know, shuffles 6 stones in your deck at the start of the game. And so those cost 1 normally, but with Quinjet, those would all cost 0. So they become, you have your essentially a third of your deck is free cards that are drawing you more cards there's a lot of different archetypes that Quinjet can go into, and we obviously have to see it more, but this card looks very, very strong.
Yeah. That now makes me really want to play a Quinjet Thanos combo deck. So hopefully we can do that soon. So we have our second Guardians of the Galaxy card here for the day. So Rocket Raccoon is a 1 cost, 2 power card, and his ability is similarly an on-reveal ability. If your opponent played a card here this turn, plus 2 power. So essentially, you can buff him to a 1/4 card as long as you guess correctly. So anything else to add here? I mean, this is similar to Mantis as far as it being kind of you have to guess, right? What are your thoughts on Rocket?
I have to say that I believe that Rocket is a good card. I think Rocket is very good, especially at the current moment when there's not as many 1-cost cards in the game. But I think he's one of those cards that gets much better the later on you play him, whereas a lot of these 1 costs don't have as much impact unless you play them early. You have to play them early. Rocket has the potential to be a 1/4 later on in the game, which is very good, and it's you usually later in the game can predict and get that additional power. So it's similar to Ant-Man, where you can fill out your curve and potentially throw him down and get that extra power you need to win a location.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. Going here we've got, I want to say 6 or 7 cards here left that we're going to be covering today. So we're coming here to some of the last ones. Continuing on, we've got Scarlet Witch. She is a 1 cost, 2 power card, and her ability reads on reveal, replace this location with a random new one. So kind of her abilities to manipulate realities, etc. You know, in the comics and the movies, essentially she can really shift the game through RNG of what some of the goals in that individual match are, because by changing a location that you guys have been playing to could really throw either player for a loop.
Yeah, this is a very interesting card. Scarlet Witch can, because of how random the effect is, and there's so many different locations to choose from. She can sometimes do nothing. Sometimes she loses you the game on the spot, or sometimes she wins you the game on the spot. So it's a very interesting card. I think this is one of my favorite cards in terms of like flavor of what the card does. Is just matches really well with the character, and I really like this card. I don't know if it's going to see play. I think it sees a decent amount of play now, as it's one of the cards you can get earlier on. I think it goes into a deck that specifically loses if certain locations come up, and it could also be a good card during the hot locations, which is where a location is much more common for a certain period of time. She could be very good at removing that location and messing up your opponent's strategy.
Yeah, great point. Something that could maybe kind of be a micro meta where Scarlet Witch comes into play and out of play, depending on the hot location. Continuing on here, we've got Squirrel Girl, another card you get really early in the game. Most people have played with Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl is a 1-cost, 1-power card that reads, on reveal, add a 1-power squirrel to each other location. So essentially you get a 1-power squirrel to add to the other 2 locations where you're not playing Squirrel Girl. Basically a way to, you know, fill the board early on, maybe get an early lead on some locations, which could lead to certain abilities triggering or not triggering. Any small thoughts about Squirrel Girl?
I'll say I really like Squirrel Girl. I think she's also a very versatile card. There's so many things that she can do on locations where you can't play cards, or cards get destroyed when they're played there. She can get an extra power into that location, which is sometimes a big deal. She's really good for go wide strategies where you're trying to buff your entire board. She's really good with destroy things because she can give, like, to cards like Carnage, she can give an extra +2 power and just kind of, you know, feed him squirrels. I think Squirrel Girl is a very versatile card, and I definitely think there's a lot of decks that she works well in.
Yeah, definitely. There is some meta, and there is some deck archetypes around trying to kind of build up a lot of minions or just fill the board and buffing them. So she fits into that quite nicely. Okay, Sunspot. Sunspot is a 1-cost, 1-power card. At the end of each turn, gain 1 power for each unspent energy. This is an interesting one I've seen a lot of people debate about as well, because, you know, in some ways you don't really want to ever be wasting energy. You'd love to be able to play as many cards and use up all of your energy ramping up each turn. But it may be nice because obviously not every turn, you know, not every round's perfect. You're usually going to waste some energy. And so Sunspot can kind of pick that up and buff itself over the course of the game.
Yeah, I will say I think I agree with you on this. I think you're exactly right. I think most of the time you're wanting to have good energy efficiency. I think is very important in this game. You know, using as much, you have limited energy, like I've said, you have to make the most of it. Converting 1 energy into 1 power isn't terribly exciting. Obviously, in order to compete with other, you know, 1 cost for potentially 4 power cards, this you need to have this on the field and then not spend 3 energy, which seems a little bit of a waste to me. So I see this usually as being like a 1/3. So there are some interesting decks that this could slot into. The one that comes to mind is there's a card called Infinite. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but Infinite is a 6 cost 20 power unit, but in order to play him, you can't have played cards previously. So Sunspot can eat that extra 5 energy from that you did not play and be a bigger card. So maybe in that deck, if that deck ends up being good, Sunspot can see play. Otherwise, I don't think Sunspot is that good.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, it seems pretty limited right now, but maybe they'll add additional cards that work well with him later on. Okay, we're down to our last 4 cards here. So we've got the Hood. I don't know if I've seen anybody unlock the Hood or play with the Hood, but the Hood is a 1-cost -2 power card. So this is our first card we've talked about that has negative power. So you may say, well, that doesn't sound great. But on reveal, add a demon to your hand. And a demon is a one cost 6 power card. So essentially, you can play the hood, then get this additional one cost 6 card in your hand. But then you're factoring that you've got -2 power on the hood. So really, it's kind of a wash. It ends up being kind of a 2 cost 4 power card. So I don't know how great this is, or if you think this really has a spot in the meta right now, but doesn't look too great to me.
This is what I'm going to have to disagree with you on. I think this card is absolutely bonkers. I think we have to see it in play. Obviously, it's all just speculation at this point because we haven't really seen people make decks with it. But there are multiple decks where I think that this could be very good. Specifically, the first one that comes to my mind is a destroy deck where you can eat the hood and eat that -2 power and convert it into something better. Cartage gets +2 power, and you're gaining a net +4 power from that, and then you have the 1/6 in your hand, which is very good. I also think that this could go into a deck with Moon Girl that's copying your hand, because copying multiple 1/6 cards in your hand is a lot of power. That's potentially, if you copy it even once, paying 2 cost for potentially a lot of value. So I think this card has the potential to be very, very good in multiple archetypes.
That is a very fair point. I may have my opinion swayed there. I think we'll have to see, like you say, but definitely may have some use if played right. Okay. I always kind of screw up this name. I think it's Uatu, the Watcher. I apologize to any hardcore Marvel fans if I'm not saying that right. But the Watcher is a 1 cost 2 power card, and his ability reads, once this is in your hand, you can see unrevealed locations. I have some thoughts on this card. I'd love to hear your thoughts first. Just good or bad, what do you think?
This card, unfortunately, I think this card is not good. And that's very sad to me because I love this character and I love just the flavor of this card that you're able to, he's watching everything. He's watching all these different realities, and you can see these two he's giving you insight, and he's really good on the information part. But the problem comes where you have to have them in your hand by turn 1 or 2, which statistically is not going to it's going to happen in about like 60 or like about 40% of your games, roughly off the top of my head. You'll have this by turn 2, and it is much better on turn 1. And then the stats, unfortunately, are a little underwhelming. So I really want to like this card because it's a very, very cool card. It's a very interesting design, but currently I can't see it being good.
Yeah, I agree. Sad. I really enjoyed him as a character in the What If series on Disney Plus, and I just don't think it'll work out that great right now. So Yondu. So this is our last Guardians of the Galaxy card for the day. Yondu is a 1 cost 2 power card, and its ability reads, on reveal, remove the top card of your opponent's deck. So this one doesn't have the kind of the guessing mechanic of a lot of the Guardians of the Galaxy card, but it does kind of just trim down your opponent's deck. So I don't know. What are your thoughts here?
I think Yondu is very interesting. I think Yondu is much better played early. I think the main aspect of Yondu, the most important part of it, is the information gained, because it will show you when you burn a card from your opponent's deck. It will show you what that card is. So if you're able to play this early and get early information on what deck your opponent is playing, you'll have a much easier time countering what they're going to be able to do. In terms of power, this card is just a vanilla 2 power for 1 cost. So the power, there's a little bit of a trade-off. So I think we'll have to see Yondu in play more. I'm leaning towards, he's very niche, or probably not going to end up being that good, but there's some potential to see his play there.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And this is our last card of the day. This is Zero. Zero is a 1 cost 3 power card. And the ability reads, on reveal, remove the abilities on the next card you play. So obviously, you could see that as a trade-off, right? You're losing an ability, but there may be some cards, like we've already seen, and that we've maybe talked about, that are in higher cost ranges, that maybe have a bad side to their ability. So, this could be nice. Maybe you remove a negative ability from a card and you still get the power of it, but you don't have the downside. So I could see this going into several decks. I'm not sure if you've seen this one or if you've played with this card at all.
I don't have this card, and I haven't really played against it that much. I will say, just from what we've seen, I think we saw a little bit of this card played in the stream over on the Marvel Snap official YouTube channel. I think this card is very interesting. I think, like you said, I think it's a niche card, but I think it has a lot of impact if you're hitting, big finishing cards that usually would have a big downside. So I think this card goes into that deck. Obviously, 3 power for 1 energy is definitely an upside as well. It's better than that vanilla 2 power stat line, so that is also something to consider. So I think this card is good, but obviously it needs to be in the right deck. It's kind of a builder. It's a little bit of a build around card.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this interacts with other cards currently in the beta, but also cards that will come into play later on. Well, that is all the 1-cost cards. So this has been awesome. I've really appreciated going through these with you. But before we go, I'd love to just hear kind of, we've talked about a lot of cards. I'd love to hear what's your favorite of the cards we've covered today. And that can be because of the art. It could be because of the character you have attachment to, or it could be because of the strategy you want to build around it. Out of all the cards we've talked about today, just briefly tell us, which one's your favorite and why.
I think out of these 1-cost cards that we've looked today, I think my personal favorite is probably Ant-Man. I love Ant-Man. Ant-Man's design as a card. I love the flexibility. I love getting 4 power for 1 cost. I just think I think Ant-Man slots into a lot of different decks. I think he's a very versatile card. And he don't really have to build around him. He's just all around good, solid, and in a lot of decks. So, and I've really enjoyed playing with him so far.
Yeah, no, I think we'll continue to see a lot of play with Ant-Man because he really at this point can just be that extra card in any deck and just be good, which is awesome. Well, Cqrbon, I've really enjoyed having you on Can't Stop Snapping. As we're getting kind of kicked off here with the podcast, I'm really glad you accepted to be, to collaborate on this and to talk about these cards, and I look forward to talking with you again, hopefully in the future. Hopefully we can have you back on. But before we go, can you just tell the listeners, where they can find you and how they can follow you online?
Yeah. So I stream over on twitch.tv at Cqrbon_. That's CQRBON_. And I also I'm currently writing articles for marvelsnap.io. So you'll probably see those. I don't really have a timeline on how frequently I'm going to be writing those, but there's one up for right now that you can read that goes over some probability questions within the game. So look forward to more of those. But yeah, I stream over on Twitch, and feel free to come hang out. We're usually pretty chill, just playing Snap and talking with chat. So it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, Cqrbon, again, I just wanted to say thank you. Appreciate you being here today. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening. And I hope we can talk again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Michael. This has been a lot of fun. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, listeners, thank you for listening, and look forward to more episodes where we will be breaking down the remainder of the cards. Hey everybody, I wanted to jump in here for just a second to tell you about Anchor. Anchor is a tool that I am using to create this podcast and distribute it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and various other podcasting platforms. Anchor is an app you can download for free on the App Store and use to record, edit, add sound effects, etc., and distribute your podcast. I chose to use it because it was very simple to get up and going quickly, and it was free to use. If you have a podcast idea that you've been throwing around in your mind and you'd like to get out there, make sure to download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started and create your podcast today. Can't Stop Snapping is a podcast written, produced, recorded, and hosted by Michael Thurman. Thanks for listening.